The soundstage smelled of ozone, burnt hairspray, and burning money. Specifically, $50,000 an hour, vaporizing into the stale air of Soundstage 9 like the fake fog pumping from the smoke machines. I sat in the corner, deep in the shadows of a stack of unused apple boxes, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago. I wore my high visibility vest. It was bright yellow. It was the only thing on this set that had any purpose. To the crew, I was Bill, just Bill, the set safety guard. The old man who grumbled if a C-stand blocked a fire lane or if a PA started vaping near the curtains. They thought I was a retired mall cop, or maybe a former janitor clinging to a union pension. They didn't look at my hands. If they had, they might have noticed the calluses were in the wrong places for a cop. They were on the thumb and forefinger, shaped by 40 years of turning focus rings and twisting the barn doors of tungsten Fresnels until the skin sizzled. Cut! Cut! For the love of God, cut! The voice cracked across the cavernous room. It belonged to Jax. He was 28 years old, wore a beanie in August, and was currently the visionary director of Neon Rain, a noir thriller that had already gone 10 million over budget. Jax stomped out from behind the video village, a fortress of monitors and laptops where he hid from reality. "It's flat!" Jax screamed, throwing his water bottle on the ground. "It looks like a damn soap opera. Why is it so flat? I asked for mood. I asked for Blade Runner meets Double Indemnity." He turned on the director of photography, a kid named Kevin who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Kevin was a technician, not an artist. He knew the menus of the red Monstro camera better than he knew the face of his own mother, but he didn't know light. He treated light like data. "The sensor is maxed out, Jax," Kevin pleaded, tapping his iPad. "We're shooting at 1280 ISO. If I drop the fill light, we crush the blacks. The histogram is touching the left wall. We'll get noise." "I don't care about the histogram," Jax yelled. "I care about the emotion. Fix it in post. Just pump up the gain. Make it pop." I took a sip of my cold coffee. It tasted like battery acid. Fix it in post. The mantra of the coward. I looked at the set. It was a disaster. They were trying to shoot the emotional climax of the film, the femme fatale, Eleanor, saying goodbye to her lover in a rainy alleyway. Except there was no alleyway, just a sea of green screen. And there was no rain, just a sprinkler system hung from the grid that was dripping water that looked like milk because they were blasting it with the wrong light. They were lighting a tragedy like it was a toothpaste commercial. I shifted in my folding chair. My hip ached. The dampness from the rain machines was seeping into my bones. "Reset!" the assistant director shouted. "Going for take 55. Hair and makeup, check the gate." Eleanor, the actress, slumped against the fake brick wall. She was shivering. Her silk dress was soaked. She looked miserable. Not the character's misery, the actress's misery. She knew she was looking bad. She knew the light was unkind. A woman knows when the light loves her and when it hates her. Right now, the light was indifferent to her, which is worse than hate. They had set up a massive, airy sky panel, a 60-pound LED soft light, directly over the camera. It was blasting her with 5,000 lumens of soft, diffuse white light. It wiped away the shadows. It filled in the hollows of her cheeks. It turned her face into a flat white moon. And the rain. Rain needs backlight to sparkle. It needs a hard source from behind to catch the droplets, to turn them into diamonds against the dark. If you hit rain with front light, It just looks like grey static. It looks like fog. I looked at the monitor sitting on the cart near me. The image was technically perfect. It was sharp. It was exposed properly. There was no noise, but the eye is a predator. The human eye hunts for contrast. It hunts for the brightest point in the frame. In this shot, the brightest point wasn't Helena's eyes. It wasn't her tears. It was the chrome trash can sitting 3 feet behind her. The sky panel was reflecting off the metal. A perfect, blown-out, specular highlight. Take 55, I whispered to my coffee cup. The tragedy of the trash can. Kevin, the DOP, was panicking. Bring in a silk, he shouted to the grips. Soften it more. Maybe if we diffuse it, it'll look moody. I closed my eyes. Soften it. That was always their answer. If it looks bad, make it blurry. You don't create mystery with softness. You create mystery with shadows. You create it by taking light away. I remembered a shoot in '78. A basement in Berlin. We had 2 lights. Just 2. A 1K Fresnel and a lighter. The director wanted terror. I put the 1K outside the window, cutting through the blinds. Hard slats of light. I let the actor's eyes go black. Total darkness. Then, when he lit his cigarette, the flame illuminated just the sweat on his upper lip. That was terror. This was digital vomit. Hey, old-timer! My eyes snapped open. Jax was pointing at me. Yeah, you! The rent-a-cop. I slowly set my coffee down. The name is Bill. I don't care if your name is Spielberg, Jax snapped. Move your chair. You're in the eye line. Eleanor keeps looking at your vest. I looked at Eleanor. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the exit sign, praying for a fire so she could go home. I'm sitting by the fire extinguisher, kid, I said. My voice was low, gravel rolling in a cement mixer. It's the regulation spot. I said move. Jax marched over. He smelled of Red Bull and insecure ego. Go sit in the hallway. We need focus here. This is high art. I stood up. I was 6'2", though I stooped a bit these days. I towered over him. I looked at the set. I looked at the massive bank of LEDs washing the soul out of the scene. You're killing the rain, I muttered. Jax froze. Excuse me? The rain, I said, gesturing with a thumb. It looks like milk. You've got too much fill. You're flattening the depth field. And your colour temperature is wrong. You're mixing 5,600 Kelvin with tungsten practicals. It's making her skin look green. Kevin, the DOP, looked up from his iPad. He squinted at me. Who is this guy? Kevin asked. He's the janitor or something, Jax sneered. Get out of here, Grandpa. Stick to the fire exits. Leave the filmmaking to the professionals. If you move the key light 10 degrees left, I said, ignoring the insult, and cut the sky panel by 80%, you'll catch the tear. What tear? Jax asked. The one she's trying to cry, I said. Right now you can't see it. The trash can is stealing the scene. Jax laughed, a sharp barking sound. Oh, this is rich. The security guard is a critic. Get off my set. Go take a nap in the lobby. I looked at him. I looked at the dark circles under his eyes. He was terrified. He was failing, and he didn't know why. He had all the toys, all the pixels, all the money, and he couldn't buy a single frame of truth. Fine, I said. I'll be in the hall. I walked away. I walked slowly, dragging my feet just enough to be annoying. Action! Jax screamed behind me. I stepped into the corridor. The heavy soundproof door clicked shut, cutting off the noise. I leaned against the wall. I closed my eyes. I could still see the image in my mind, the waveform, the histogram. The lights were screaming. It was in pain. I wasn't just a guard. In the 70s, they called me the Shadow. I didn't use light meters. I used my hand. I could tell the f-stop by the heat of the lamp on my cheek. I shot the Midnight Protocol on 35mm film with an ISO of 100 in a subway tunnel, pushing the stock until the grain looked like living, breathing organisms. I invented the negative wedge, a way of using black flags to carve faces out of the darkness. But the industry changed. It went digital. It went fast. It stopped caring about the craft and started caring about the content. They didn't want shadows anymore. Shadows were data loss. They wanted everything bright, flat and safe, so they could manipulate it later on a computer. I retired. I vanished. I took a job guarding the very stages I used to command, just to be near the smell of the hot dust and the ozone. But watching this was torture. The door opened. "Lunch!" a PA shouted down the hall. "That's a wrap for lunch, everyone. Back in 1 hour." The stampede began. The crew flooded out, zombie walking toward the catering truck. They were exhausted, defeated. Kevin walked past me, staring at his phone, muttering about LUTs and colour spaces. Jax walked past, arguing with the producer on his cell. "I know it looks bad, Marty. We'll fix it in the colour grade. Just give me more money for VFX." They disappeared around the corner. The hallway was quiet. I looked at the door to Soundstage 9. I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. It wasn't my job. I was paid to ensure nobody smoked and nobody stole the copper wiring. But I was an artist, and an artist cannot walk past a crooked painting without straightening it. I pushed the door open. The soundstage was silent. The work lights were on, a sickly yellow glow. The expensive cinema lights were dimmed but still humming, cooling down. The rain machine was dripping. Drip, drip, drip. I walked onto the set. It was a mess of cables and ego. I stood where the camera was. A red monstro on a robotic arm. $100,000 paperweight. I looked at the lighting grid. They had a book light set up, bouncing light into a reflector and then through a diffusion sheet. It was soft, beautiful technically, but boring. It was safe light. It wrapped around the face like a warm blanket. Noir isn't warm. Noir is cold. Noir is sharp. "Forgive me, cinema," I whispered. I walked over to the C-stand holding the massive sky panel. I didn't adjust the dimmer. I didn't check the DMX board. I reached down and grabbed the header cable. Click. I yanked it out. The massive soft light died. The set plunged into semi-darkness. Better already. I walked to the fill lights. 2 LED panels on the floor, aimed up at the actress's chin to hide her wrinkles. "Garbage," I muttered. "You removed the character." Click, click. I unplugged them. Now the set was dark. The only light coming in was from the safety lights on the ceiling high above. I looked around. I needed a key. A hard key. I found it in the corner, buried under a pile of sandbags. An old RET one. A tungsten Fresnel. A 1,000-watt bulb behind a glass lens. A dinosaur. They probably used it as a work light. I dragged it out. It was heavy. It smelled of burnt dust when I plugged it in. I raised the stand. I extended it 12 feet into the air. I positioned it behind the actress's mark. Not in front. Behind, back and to the left. I turned it on. A beam of pure, warm amber light cut through the gloom. It hit the wet pavement of the set. It hit the rain droplets still dripping from the rig. Suddenly, the water didn't look like milk. It looked like diamonds. The hard light caught every drop, exploding it into a star. But now the face was dark. Perfect. I needed a bounce. Just a touch. The kiss. I looked around for a reflector. The crew had packed them all away. I walked over to the craft services trash can. I saw a styrofoam plate. Too small. Then I saw it. A piece of packing foam from a new monitor box. About 2 feet square. White. Beastly. I grabbed it. I grabbed a C-stand and a clamp. I rigged the styrofoam just to the right of the camera lens. I angled the T1 Fresnel so that the beam slashed across the back of the set, catching the rain, hitting the brick wall, and spilling just a tiny fraction of its energy onto the white styrofoam. The styrofoam caught that spill and threw a soft, barely perceptible glow back onto where Eleanor's face would be. It wasn't light. It was the memory of light. It would illuminate only one thing, the moisture in her eyes. I stepped back to the camera monitor. I turned it on. The screen flickered to life. The image was dark, deep, crushed blacks. The histogram was smashed against the left side, exactly where Kevin said it shouldn't be. But in the centre of the darkness, there was a slash of gold. The rain was a curtain of fire. And in the void where the face should be, there was a soft, ghostly presence. It wasn't a toothpaste commercial anymore. It was a confession. It was beautiful. I stood there, staring at the monitor, lost in the grain. I felt the old thrill, the dopamine hit of capturing a photon and forcing it to tell a lie that tells the truth. I didn't hear the door open. What the hell? The voice echoed through the silence. I didn't turn around. I knew who it was. Jax. He marched onto the set, followed by Kevin and the producer, Marty. "Who killed the lights?" Jax screamed. His voice went up an octave. "We're losing $50,000 a minute. Why is it dark? Where is my sky panel?" He stopped. He saw the unplugged cables lying like dead snakes on the floor. He saw the single ancient tungsten lamp burning in the corner. And then he saw me. I was standing by the C-stand, adjusting the angle of a piece of trash styrofoam. Jax's face went purple. "You!" he shrieked. "The security guard. What are you doing? Did you touch my lights?" I turned slowly. I dusted off my hands. "I fixed your rain," I said. You unplugged the grid." Jax looked like he was having an aneurysm. "You sabotaged the set. That is union equipment. You aren't allowed to touch that." "It was ugly," I said simply. "Security," Jax yelled, spinning around to look for, well, me. But since I was the security, he yelled for his personal bodyguards. "Get this lunatic off my set. He's crazy. He's trying to ruin the movie." Kevin, the DOP, rushed to the monitor. "Oh my God," Kevin said. "The exposure is gone. It's pitch black. We have zero data in the shadows. The sensor is going to clip." "I told you," Jax screamed. "He destroyed the setup. We have to re-rig everything. That's 3 hours of work." Two large men in black t-shirts, Jax's personal security, stepped out of the shadows. They cracked their knuckles. "Get him out!" Jax pointed a trembling finger at me. "And called the police. I want him arrested for vandalism." The guards walked toward me. "Easy, fellas," I said, raising my hands. "I'm going. Just wanted to show the kid how to light a teardrop." "Get him out!" Jax roared. I sighed. I looked at the single light one last time. It was a good setup. Simple. Elegant. And about to be destroyed by a boy who thought the sun rose and set in a microchip. One of the guards grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. "Come on, Pops," the guard said. "Don't make this hard." "Wait," The voice was soft, but it cut through the shouting like a razor. It came from the dressing room door. Eleanor. She was standing there retouching her lipstick. She had come back early. She walked onto the set. She looked at the dark stage. She looked at the single harsh beam of light cutting through the artificial rain. She didn't look at Jax. She didn't look at the guards. She walked into the light. She stood on her mark. The tungsten beam hit her back hair, creating a halo of fire. The rain sparkled around her, and the piece of styrofoam I had rigged caught the spill and bounced a tiny soft glow into her eyes. She looked at the monitor. She gasped. "Wait," Eleanor said, holding up a hand. "Eleanor, don't look at it," Jax said, rushing over. "It's a disaster. This crazy old man unplugged everything. We're going to fix it. We'll put the sky panel back." "No," Eleanor said. She walked closer to the monitor. Her eyes were wide. "Look at the monitor, Jax. I don't want to look at a black screen." "Look at it," she commanded. Jax stopped. He looked at the screen. He blinked. On the monitor, Eleanor didn't look like a soap opera star. She didn't look like a video game character. She looked like a ghost. She looked like a woman who had just lost everything. The darkness swallowed her, and the light found her only where it mattered. The trash can highlight was gone. The milky rain was gone. There was just a face floating in the void, beautiful and terrified. "Who did this?" Eleanor whispered. She touched the screen. I look real." Jack stared at the image. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at the histogram. It was wrong, but the image was right. "The sensor," Kevin stammered. It shouldn't look this good. It's technically underexposed." "It's not underexposed," I said from the grip of the security guard. "It's moody. It's noir." Eleanor turned to look at me. She saw the old man in the yellow vest, being held by two thugs. "Let him go," Eleanor said. "Eleanor, he's a liability," Jax argued, though his voice lacked conviction now. He couldn't take his eyes off the monitor. "I said let him go," Elena repeated. She looked at me. "You did this? With one light?" "And a piece of packing foam," I added. I shook my arm free from the guard. I adjusted my vest. "You were lighting the air, kid," I said to Jax. "You don't light the air. You light the pain. You turn off the rain machine. You use a spray bottle on the lens. Diffusion filters are for cowards. If you want her to look like she's crying, you don't flood her with lumens. You give the darkness a shape." I walked over to the camera. "And kill the rim light on the left," I said to the grip, who was standing there with his mouth open. "Give me negative fill. Put a black flag there. Suck the light out." The grip looked at Jax. "Boss?" Jax looked at the monitor. He looked at the perfect image he had been trying to get for 3 days and failing. He looked at the old man who spoke the language of the gods. Jax swallowed his ego. It was a large pill, but he swallowed it. "Do what he says," Jax whispered. The silence on Soundstage 9 was different now. It wasn't the silence of boredom or the silence of fear, which is the standard atmosphere of a film set running 3 hours into overtime. It was the silence of a church before the choir draws breath. It was the silence of expectation. "Do what he says," Jax had whispered. The grip, a burly guy named Tony, who looked like he could bench press a Volkswagen, stared at the director, then at me. He looked at the unplugged sky panel, the expensive LED coffin lying dead on the floor, and then at the ancient, sizzling tungsten Fresnel I had rigged. You heard him, I said. My voice was calm. I adjusted the collar of my yellow safety vest. Kill the rim light on the left. It's spilling onto the wall. It looks like a motel sign. We want a void, not a motel. Tony blinked, then nodded. Kill the rim. Copy that. He moved fast. The crew, sensing a shift in the magnetic poles of the set, snapped out of their lethargy. They didn't know who I was. To them, I was still just a cranky old guard. But they recognized the tone. It was the tone of a man who knew exactly where the photons were going to land. Camera, I said, walking over to the dolly. Kevin, right? The young DOP looked at me, clutching his iPad like a shield. Yeah. Drop the ISO to 800, I ordered. We don't need the digital noise. The T1 is giving you enough output if you open the aperture to a 2.8. But the depth of field, Kevin stammered. At 2.8, the focus puller will have a heart attack. If she leans forward an inch, she's soft. Then she won't lean forward, I said. I looked at Eleanor. She was standing in the pool of amber light, watching me with an intensity that matched the tungsten bulb. Will you, darling? I'll be a statue, Elena said. Her voice was husky. She felt the mood. She was already in character. Good. I turned back to Kevin. And take that matte box off. The lens is too clean. It's clinical. We need texture. Texture? Kevin asked. I can add grain in DaVinci Resolve. You can add digital noise, I corrected. You can't add soul. Costume department. Anyone here? A terrified young woman with a pincushion on her wrist stepped forward. Yes? I need a stocking, I said. Silk. Black. Sheer. Preferably vintage, but I'll take what you have. She rummaged in her bag and produced a pair of black nylons. I took them. I pulled a pocket knife from my belt, something that was strictly against studio safety regulations for a guard, and sliced a square of the fabric. I walked to the $100,000 camera lens. What are you doing? Jax asked, stepping closer. He looked like a child watching a magician dismantle a bomb. Rear mounting a net, I lied. I wasn't rear mounting anything. I stretched the silk stocking over the rear element of the lens, securing it with a rubber band I pulled off my wrist. Old trick. The threads diffract the highlights. It makes the light bloom. It turns the skin into porcelain. It takes the digital curse off the image. I stepped back, checked the monitor. Kevin looked at the screen. He gasped. The image had transformed. The sharpness was still there, but the harsh electronic edge was gone. The single hard light I had rigged was now glowing, wrapping around Eleanor's cheekbones like liquid gold. The silk had softened the contrast without destroying the shadows. It looked like 1940. It looked like film. Okay, I said, rubbing my hands together. Now the rain. Turn the sprinklers back on, the special effects coordinator asked, his hand on the valve. No, I said. Leave them off. If you turn them on, you'll drown the sound. We need intimacy. I walked over to a cleaning cart and grabbed a spray bottle of window cleaner. I dumped the blue liquid out onto the concrete floor. I walked to the water cooler, filled it with water, and walked back to the camera. Glass, I said to the camera assistant. Put a clear filter in front of the lens. He obeyed. I aimed the spray bottle at the glass filter. Spritz. Fine mist coated the glass. Now, I said, aim the T1 so it hits the glass filter. I adjusted the barn doors of the light. A thin sliver of light hit the water droplet sitting directly in front of the lens. On the monitor, the effect was miraculous. The out-of-focus droplets created a curtain of bokeh, shimmering, abstract orbs of light that framed Elena's face. It looked like we were shooting through a rainy windshield, looking in at a private moment. It felt voyeuristic. It felt lonely. "You're lighting the foreground," I explained to Jax, who was staring at the screen with his mouth slightly open. "You don't need to soak the actress to sell the rain. You just need to soak the lens. The audience feels the wetness because they are looking through it." Jax looked at me. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm the guy saving your $50,000, I grunted. "Now clear the set. Everyone behind the dark line. Give the lady some air." The crew vanished into the shadows. I stood by the C-stand, holding the piece of white styrofoam. It was my instrument. I could tilt it an inch and change the emotion of the scene. "Roll sound," the AD called out. His voice was reverent. Speed. Camera rolling. "Scene 94, take 1, the clapper loader said, marking the slate softly. Click. "Action," Jax whispered. Eleanor stood in the dark. The single beam of tungsten light cut across her face, Rembrandt-esque. The left side of her face was in total shadow. Negative fill. The right side was hot, overexposed by half a stop. Dangerous. She didn't speak immediately. She let the silence hang. She looked at the empty space where her lover was supposed to be. She inhaled. On the monitor, the silk stocking diffused, the light catching her breath, making it visible. A tiny cloud of cold air. "I didn't want the money," Eleanor said. Her voice was a whisper, but the boom mic, booming from above in the silence, caught every tremor. "I just wanted the rain to stop." She looked up. She looked directly at the styrofoam board I was holding. I tilted the board down, just a fraction of a degree. The light caught the moisture in her lower eyelid. The tear fell. It travelled down her cheek, tracing the line of light. It sparkled like a falling star against the deep, crushed blacks of the background. It was the most beautiful thing I had seen in 20 years. She didn't sob. She didn't contort her face. She just let the tear fall, and then she turned away, into the darkness, into the void I created for her. "Cut," I whispered. Jax didn't say it. He was standing by the monitor, wiping his eyes. "Cut!" the AD yelled, breaking the spell. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The crew stood frozen. They knew. Even the PAs, who usually spent texting on their phones, were staring at the set. They had just witnessed alchemy. They had seen plastic and concrete turned into heartbreak. Then Eleanor let out a breath. She slumped against the wall, drained. "Did we get it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We got it," Jax croaked. "We got it." "Check the gate," Kevin said, out of habit, though with digital there is no gate to check. It was clean. It was perfect. Suddenly, the heavy soundstage door burst open. "What is going on in here?" A man in a suit marched in. He was older, maybe my age. White hair, expensive glasses, a scarf thrown loosely around his neck. Marty, the executive producer, the man who signed the checks. "I saw the Dailies feed go dark," Marty shouted, marching toward the video village. "Why are the lights off? Jax, if you're behind schedule, I swear to God I'll..." He stopped. He looked at the monitor, where the video assist operator was replaying the take. He watched the scene. He watched the light wrap around Elena's face. He watched a tear fall through the bouquet of the spray bottle. Marty froze. He took off his glasses. He leaned in, his nose almost touching the screen. "That light," Marty whispered. "That key-to-fill ratio. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. Hard tungsten. Silk diffusion. He turned around slowly. He scanned the set. He saw the unplugged sky panels pushed into the corner. He saw the single T1 Fresnel on the high stand. He saw the black flags cutting the spill. And then he saw me. I was coiling the stinger, the extension cord, back onto the stand. My yellow vest was unzipped. I looked tired. Marty walked onto the set. He walked past Jax. He walked past Elena. He walked right up to me. He squinted. "Bill?" I looked up. "Hello, Marty. Been a while." "A while?" Marty laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "A while? It's been 30 years. I thought you were dead. I heard you died in a motorcycle crash in '95. "I retired," I said. "Same thing in this town." Marty shook his head. He looked at the styrofoam board in my hand. He looked at the Arri T1. "The Berlin setup," Marty said softly. "I haven't seen that since we shot the coldest winter. Only one man lights rain like that. Only one man has the balls to use a single source for a close-up." He turned to the crew. "Do you know who this is?" Marty shouted, pointing at me. The crew stared blankly. Jax looked confused. "This is the Shadow," Marty announced. "William Halloway. The man who shot Nightfall. The man who taught Deakins how to use negative fill. He's a legend." Jax stepped forward. "The Shadow? Wait, I studied your frames in film school, but you're a security guard." "I like the quiet," I said, putting the styrofoam back in the trash can. "And the dental benefits are better." Jax looked at the monitor, then at me. The arrogance was gone. The insecurity was gone. In its place was the hunger of a student who has just met the master. "Mr. Halloway," Jax said. "Bill, we have 3 weeks of shooting left. The DOP. Kevin is great, but I need this look. I need this eye." He gestured to the set. "Take the chair," Jax said. "Be the cinematographer. Name your price. I don't care. Double scale. Triple. Just like the rest of the movie." The crew waited. Kevin looked terrified, but resigned. He knew he had been outclassed by a piece of styrofoam. I looked at the set. I looked at the camera. I felt the heat of the tungsten bulb on my face. It felt like home. But home is a place you visit, not a place you stay once you've left. I looked at my hands. They were shaking slightly. Not from age, but from the adrenaline. At 71, that much adrenaline is dangerous. "No," I said. Jax blinked. "What? Why? You just saved the film." "I'm too old for the hours, kid," I said. "I like my sleep, and I don't have the patience for the politics anymore." I zipped up my yellow vest. "Besides," I said, nodding at Kevin, "the kid knows the menus. He just needs to learn to look at the world, not the iPad. Teach him, Jax. Don't replace him." I picked up my thermos of cold coffee. "Just keep the contrast high," I said to Kevin. "And stop trusting the histogram. Trust your gut. If it feels scary, it's probably right." I started to walk away. "Wait!" Eleanor called out. "Bill!" I turned. She was still standing in the light I'd made for her. She looked radiant. "Thank you," she said. I tipped my imaginary hat. "You cried the tear, darling. I just gave it a place to land." I walked toward the exit. The heavy soundproof door loomed ahead. "Marty," I said, pausing at the threshold. "Don't fire the kid. He's got a good eye. He's just blinded by the tech." "I won't," Marty promised. "Good to see you, Bill." "Good to be seen," I said. I pushed the door open and walked out into the cool night air of the studio lot. The real stars were overhead, feeble and dim compared to the 1,000-watt sun I had just controlled. I took a breath. It smelled of jasmine and diesel. I went back to the guard shack. I had a crossword puzzle to finish. 6 months later. The premiere of Neon Rain was held at the Cinerama Dome on Sunset Boulevard. The red carpet was a zoo. Flashbulbs popping, influencers streaming, the screaming of fans. I bought a ticket. General admission. I wore my Sunday suit, the one that didn't smell like mothballs. I bought a bucket of popcorn and a soda that cost as much as a small car. I sat in the back row, far corner. The seat was sticky. The air smelled of butter and anticipation. The lights went down. The curtain parted. The movie started. It was okay. Jax was a young director. He cut too fast. He used too much music. The plot was a bit derivative. But then, the third act arrived. The scene in the alleyway. The audience shifted in their seats. The rhythm of the film changed. It slowed down. The frantic editing stopped. On the massive curved screen, the image appeared. Darkness. Deep, velvety, rich darkness. And then, the beam of amber lights, the rain sparkling like diamonds, the out-of-focus bokeh framing Eleanor's face. The theatre went silent. A collective intake of breath. It was jarring. It looked different from the rest of the movie. It looked timeless. It looked like cinema. I watched the giant face of Eleanor on the screen. I saw the styrofoam reflection in her eye, a tiny, square catchlight that gave her life. I just wanted the rain to stop, she whispered. The tear fell. The light caught it. It was a streak of lightning across the screen. Someone in the row in front of me gasped. "Wow!" a girl whispered to her boyfriend. "Look at that shot." I smiled in the darkness. I ate a kernel of popcorn. The scene faded to black. The movie ended. The applause was polite but enthusiastic. The credits rolled. Directed by Jax. Starring Elena. Director of photography Kevin. I waited. I watched the white text scroll up the black screen. The gaffers, the grips, the best boys, the catering. Most people were leaving. The lights were coming up halfway. And then, right before the music ended, a single card appeared on the screen. It wasn't in the standard digital font of the rest of the credits. It was in a jagged typewriter font. Courier New. A nod to the past. Visual consultant. The shadow. I froze. I hadn't asked for that. I hadn't signed a release. I looked at the screen. The text lingered for a second longer than the rest. Marty. It had to be Marty. A young film student sitting 2 seats away from me nudged his friend. "The shadow," the student whispered. "Who's that? That sounds cool." "Probably some AI thing," his friend shrugged. I chuckled. I stood up. My knees popped. I tossed my empty popcorn bucket into the trash can by the exit. "Not bad, kid," I whispered to the screen. "Not bad." I walked out of the theatre, past the red carpet that was being rolled up, past the posters of the movie that featured the shot, my shot, as the main image. I walked to the bus stop. The streetlights were sodium vapour, orange, ugly. They cast flat, lifeless shadows. I squinted. If I moved the bus bench 2 feet to the left, and maybe kicked out the bulb in the storefront behind me, I could create a nice silhouette. I shook my head. "Stop working, Bill," I told myself. But as I stood there, waiting for the number 2 bus, I couldn't help it. I watched the way the headlights of the passing cars flared in the mist. I watched the contrast. I was the shadow, and the world was always lit if you knew where to look.